bring up the state CIO, the Honorable Jim Weaver here, and I'm going to give him leave if he's got staff in the room that he'd like to include in his presentation as well. Bring them up. You've got lead to do that as you see fit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Again, good morning, everybody. Again, thank you, Chairman Johnson, for your continued partnership and collaboration with DIT. Brooks, as always, thank you very much for all you do. Just as a little backstory, and some of you have heard the story or me tell this already. As I was transitioning to North Carolina, the first meeting I had was with a younger pre-broadband Nate Denny. But the second meeting that was set up by the governor's office was with Brooks and Ed Turlington. That was the level of importance that the Cooper administration placed upon the collaboration partnership with the Tech Association. And I will tell you, it's been a godsend for us to have such a strong Tech Association. This is the first state I've been in where a Tech Association has been holistically focused on the entire state, not regions of a state. And it pays dividends, and we're so fortunate in North Carolina to have such a strong tech partnership. So again, Brooks, thank you for all you continue to do in helping us out as well. Okay, here we go. Let's see if I'm good enough to do this. One of the things I try to do, and I don't think I've done this with legislative members, is I've dropped the technology, is just kind of give you a flavor of what's going on across the country. So NASCIO stands for the National Association of State CIOs. I currently serve as the president of that organization. It's inclusive of all 50 states and 6 territories. So we have Guam, American Samoa, Northern Marianas, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and yes, the District of Columbia. We count as our friend as well in this thing. But what we do is on an annual basis, we go through and we take a look across our community and talk about what are the top 10 priorities that each of us are focused on. And what you see here is the outcome or the output for 2024. And why 2024 is interesting is for the first time ever in NASCIO's history, there's been a tie for first place. And I think these are all themes that you will see resonating very much in our conversations as an agency, as well as within our communities in the tech sector. Clearly, cybersecurity and risk management, those are table stakes. It's a must-have. We need to do that. We need to do that better. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But what really jumped up is the fact around digital government, digital services. And this is a culture change. This is not necessarily a technology problem. We have to start thinking about how do we service North Carolinians differently and change the paradigm from an agency, state government perspective of this is my services, this is how you come and consume me, versus now, how do you want to be consumed as a resident of the state? What are the things you're interested in? What are the things that you're willing to share with us? What are your interests? How can we begin to engage you differently than what we do today? And I think local government is well ahead of us on this path on this journey, because really a lot of government services are done at the local government level that a resident sees on a daily basis. When you think about trash being picked up, water, sewage, those kind of things, they see local government in action all the time. But not necessarily when you look at state government. You know, when you think about the big things around state government, as I jokingly referred to the infamous 8 words, it's educate, incarcerate, medicate, words like that folks think about from a state government aspect. And we need to start changing that paradigm a little bit. And how do we begin to engage and think differently about a North Carolinian? Because there's no one North Carolinian ever deals with a single agency. If you think about it here in North Carolina, all of you sitting in this room, is there just a single agency that you interact with in the course of a year? And if the answer is yes, come see me on the sidebar and tell me what it is so I have a better understanding. But I think the answer is no, and I think you all agree the answer is no. So we got to begin to think about doing some things differently. And this is something that you've seen in our strategic plan for a number of years now, and it's something that we're going to continue to put forward as a concept, and hopefully we can gain some better traction and be able to do some things differently than what we're doing today at a state government level. Popping out of nowhere, probably to no one's surprise, but really popping out of nowhere, number 3, is really artificial intelligence. It's the first time this has shown up on the list. We'll talk a little bit about our AI a little bit later here. But this is something, if Representative Sane was here, I would use the Force example in Star Wars. There's the good side of the Force and there's the bad side of the Force. This is AI. There's going to be a phenomenal bunch of use cases and really powerful things that AI can do. It's going to be a lot of bad things that AI can do as well. And it's going to be very important for how we go about and address the risk and the risk management around artificial intelligence, and more importantly, our data, because the buzzword generative AI, for generative AI to be successful and be able to do what it needs to do and capture the power of what generative AI can bring, it's about the data. Gen AI by itself cannot do anything. It needs data, and we are the keepers of that data. Legacy modernization should be no shocker. I think, as you've seen, and I believe from the session law that was passed back last year in the budget, the state has made a lot of requests to do legacy modernization. We have an aging portfolio of IT here in the state of North Carolina that needs to be addressed and modernized, which goes hand in hand then with us being able to provide a different type of digital government services back to the North Carolinians. Workforce, Brooks had done a phenomenal job talking about workforce, but there's other things that we have to start thinking about from workforce as well. I know a portion of our workforce could be impacted by generative AI and what generative AI is going to bring or not bring, and that could be a workforce disruptor as an example as we look down the road. So workforce and how we recruit, retain, attract new employees. I will tell you that IT, from my perspective, is now vocational. So as Brooks had indicated in your slide, it was 37% didn't require an undergraduate degree. It's more and more important that we are getting out into our public school systems and providing that IT education at that level. So as these young men and women are graduating, they can step out and become a viable employee of our workforce. Yes, they can still go to higher education. We will encourage that and we will incentivize that. But not everybody's ready to go out the door right away and go to a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree program. But we can have them employable in the IT workforce today if we do a little bit better job of what we're doing across our public school systems. And we'll talk a little bit about that down the road. As I said before, generative AI, you can't do it without data. So data management, data analytics. I want to thank the House for your continued support. There's a number of initiatives that got passed in the budget last year that allows us to do data discovery and data classification efforts, which will tie back into our artificial intelligence work. I'm going to defer to Nate to talk a lot about broadband. I was shocked to see we're only 40. So I question your numbers? No. But we do have the #1 program in the country, hands down. I feel very confident about that. I love going around the country and saying that. Nobody can challenge us. But Nate, Angie, Jeff, when he was still with us, have done a phenomenal job of getting our broadband program to where it needs to be across the country. We would not be there without the help of the General Assembly in doing so. Identity access management, again, that goes back to our digital government. How do we start identifying residents of the state? I'm Jim Weaver, state employee. I'm Jim Weaver in the military. I'm Jim Weaver, citizen. I could be Jim Weaver, a business owner. Am I 4 things or am I a thing? Just ponder that a little bit as you go forward. How do I get to self-identify how I want to engage with government? So it goes back to that paradigm shift. Migration to cloud services is going to be as ongoing. It's going down in prioritization. I will tell you, as generative AI is coming about, there was a lot of conversation around power and different things along our data centers. I will tell you, our data center right now, the data centers that we run and operate at the state level, we can't generate the power requirements that are now coming out with the new technology. We have requests right now for 100-watt racks. We should be going to 130-watt racks for the future for what generative AI is going to bring, the consumption-based power. When you look at cooling, Lenovo has shown us already and other tech vendors about basically having water-cooled systems. When have you had water in a data center? If you think about it, right? It was get away from water. Water and electricity don't work together. Guess what we're doing now? Because of the cooling requirements of these new high-power tech systems, they're now being water-cooled. So we have a lot of effort that's going to be occurring here across our universities, across us at the state government level, and probably private sector in general as far as being able to support what the compute requirements are going to be now for generative AI as that continues to roll out. A chip now is about $60,000. When you think about it, it's no longer a little microprocessor. When we talk about a chip, we're talking about NVIDIA's chip is now like this with 8 GPUs around it. It costed about $1 billion to market and develop, but it's now 40 grand a pop. This is the kind of compute capacity that's now coming about as a result of artificial intelligence. And then lastly is a model that's been out there. We call it CIO as a broker. It's something I've talked about is the fact that I think we need to transition away from being a provider of IT services. We need to start engaging our supplier community, our vendor community differently to provide those day-to-day services. We need to flow into being more of a broker of those services, and it's a different engagement model. So we need less people to be hands-on IT folks. We need more people to start understanding how to do vendor management, portfolio management, project management. Those are the areas where I think as a state we will provide more value back to the agencies and North Carolinians overall. What you do not see up there, interestingly enough, is cost containment. IT traditionally is a lagging indicator. I think it's going to be a topic that's probably going to come up in about 2 years because we're going to see the drying up, if you will, of the federal funds that had been rolling down as a result of COVID and post-pandemic activities. But at some point in time, I do believe we're going to start seeing cost containment again come back up there in the top 10. And the other area that's not addressed here that fell off the list is consolidation, centralization, optimization, whatever shun word you want to call it. That's because most states have done IT consolidation within the state. Here in North Carolina, we're kind of in a hybrid approach. We're kind of there, but we're not there. But most states have, in fact, gone forward with a single consolidated IT operating model for the entire state government structure. And that's why you don't see that up there any longer. Okay, moving ahead. Just real quick, our statewide IT strategic plan has not changed. This was created back in 2021. I think it's still very appropriate for what we're focused on. It highlights what Governor Cooper has given to me as my strategic priorities, and I think it also aligns with a lot of work that we've been able to get accomplished with our colleagues here in the General Assembly. Broadband connectivity is really number one. Again, Nate will talk a little bit about that here upcoming. Cyber and privacy. We have not talked much about privacy to the legislative members. We have on some individual basis, but privacy, as we start looking at generative AI, it's going to become more and more of a theme that needs to be addressed. Recently, I had the opportunity to be out in Redmond and Microsoft, and the question was asked of their chief counsel, what's the number one thing we should focus on if we were starting out new on a generative AI trek? And his response was, your state needs a privacy bill. That will be something that probably in the upcoming administration might be something that we're going to try to push forward and see what the appetite is. But it's really going to start driving a lot of things that we do from a generative AI perspective as we start looking at privacy and cybersecurity. And then obviously that ties back into digital transformation. So with that, I want to turn it over to Nate and let him talk a little bit about broadband. Again, we have the best program in the country, hands down. We're working very hard to be able to get that $1.5 billion of BEAD funds that was mentioned. And so, Nate, I'll let you tell us all the great things you guys are working on.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate the chance to give you a very, I promise, brief update on our broadband work. If I can figure this thing out. All right. First, I want to come back to the interesting slide that Brooks shared on affordability on internet access. I'd love to compare notes on the data source there and really understand what affordable means, right? I think we're showing an 85, percent subscription rate statewide, right? That's up from, I think, 71, 72% when we started this work. You know, we're really concerned about the expiration, Congress's failure to fund the Affordable Connectivity Program. We had 900,000 North Carolina households benefiting from that program. A pretty significant number of those are folks who otherwise could not afford internet service, and so we expect to see our subscription rates drop as a result. But encouraging to see. I think we had a survey on the digital equity side that showed about 27% of North Carolinians characterize their internet service as affordable. Another 50% characterize it as somewhat affordable. So maybe it's close. But yeah, let's compare notes on that data. Just want to quickly talk about our work now. This is the very latest and greatest FCC map of unserved and underserved need across North Carolina. We're at about 236,000 unserved locations at this point. 146,000 underserved, meaning they've got something but not the speeds we want to see or the reliability we want to see to really participate in the modern economy, right? Multiple Teams meetings, working from home, learning from home, telemedicine access, and so on. You need a higher speed and quality of service than you did previously. This is going to be our baseline going into the $1.5 billion BEAD program that was mentioned earlier. The good news is we have awarded now 157 projects statewide, about $403 million worth of state investment to connect 160,000 of those locations. So that's all work that's happened through the Great Grant program and the new Completing Access to Broadband program over the last 2 years. So we've made tremendous investments and progress against that need, thanks to the investments that the governor and the General Assembly have agreed on through these programs using American Rescue Plan dollars. I've talked a lot in this setting about the Great Grant program before. We've awarded just about all of that funding. We've had a couple of grantees withdraw, and so we're working through replacement awards for those. But the big movement right now is the Completing Access to Broadband program. And you'll recall that's the program that is a direct partnership with county governments. Right, so we've awarded our first 15 projects. We work with the county to define need in that county and develop a scope of work and use a procurement model to solicit bids from internet providers and really end up with the county government and the internet provider at a negotiating table together, figuring out what the project needs to look like to really address that need across the county. Those 15 projects were about $34 million in CAB funds, with about $33 million in matching funds from both county and internet provider. And that serves about 15,000 people, homes or businesses statewide. The really exciting thing about this program is because we've got local leadership tied into the project development, we're able to address need on a much more comprehensive basis. So in these 15 counties, these CAB awards address 47% of the total need in those counties. In a few of them, we address nearly everything. In Avery County, for example, the CAB award addresses 93% of the unserved locations in the county. In Beaufort, 90%. In Jones, 70%. Pamlico's, 93% of unserved locations. Perquimans County, 94%. And Pitt County, which is a big one, 94% of unserved locations. That's tremendous progress on this mission and a real testament to the team, to the work that Angie Bailey and her team from the Broadband Infrastructure Office have done to this point. I do want to say quickly that because the CAB program, and I've talked about this in this setting before, requires a county match, we're starting to run out of counties that have funding set aside. We're really grateful that the House and the Senate both incorporated legislative language we have recommended that would get rid of that county match requirement so that we can do 100 counties worth of projects, not 37. But it would be great if y'all could agree on that language and move it on forward quickly. You know, one thing, and I know you're aware of this, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee, our American Rescue Plan funded projects take about 2 years to build. All the American Rescue Plan money has to be spent by December 31st, 2026. So the time frame for us to compete, award, allow extensions where needed for construction, that's dramatically shrinking. And if we don't start projects or award projects until September or later, for example, then we're going to end up with 3 or fewer months to compete $350 million worth of projects and not have any room for providers to seek extension. So we're cutting it close there. Also on the topic of American Rescue Plan funded projects, just a couple of weeks ago we awarded $30 million in digital literacy programming and device availability programming to more than 60 applicants across the state. These include higher education groups, county school units, libraries, COGS, and others that are either trying to provide North Carolinians with training or actual devices to help them close the digital divide. Tremendous progress in that program as well. We had an original $50 million appropriation with American Rescue Plan funds, and $44 million of those have now been awarded for this exact work. And then lastly, I'll just mention the BEAD program that Brian brought up in his introduction. That's the $1.5 billion. It's a part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. We have a pretty complex series of hoops to jump through with the federal government, with U.S. Commerce and the National Telecommunication and Information Administration to get our plan approved. We've got 2 volumes in our initial proposal, the first of which has already been approved by the feds, the second of which we are waiting for. I mentioned that legislative package of needs around broadband. One of the things that does is authorizes the state to run one comprehensive BEAD competitive grant program. That also has some time sensitivity because there could be some desire at the federal level to see that program authorized before they approve all of our planning. So I just want to mention that, the urgency on that as well. But what we'll do, given that our Volume 1 has been approved, we'll be able to launch our challenge process where we seek feedback from communities and internet providers about the quality of those maps that I referenced before, and then pre-qualify internet providers to compete. Probably start, the pre-qualification and challenge will start in September, and we'll be ready to start running a competitive grant program in January 2025. So a tremendous amount of progress here across the board. Appreciate this committee and the House and the Senate's support on these programs generally, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Nate, if you would just mention very quick the dashboards that you're about ready to the public.
Yes, sir. They are public now. So we actually just issued new dashboards at ncbroadband.gov where you can see our progress moving the people's money out into these communities, right? The number of awards, the locations, the types of awards, and importantly for your constituents, project completion dates for those broadband infrastructure projects that we're funding in your communities. So ncbroadband.gov, I'm happy to send that around to members of the committee after this meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, we originally estimated to get around $800 million of BEAD funding, and through the work and the data that we had available and Angie's team and others, we were able to sit there and refute a number of FCC, what they considered served entities. We were able to show that they're either unserved or underserved, and that work has basically netted us another $700 million coming to the state of North Carolina. 4th largest award, right?
Our first estimate was $880 million, and we went to $1.53 billion.
Yes.
Thanks in part to the mapping appropriation of the General Assembly.
Yes. So again, we're thank you for the investment you're making into our agency. It is hopefully paying dividends, and as you can see, we are bringing a boatload of money here to the state for this purpose. As Nate mentioned, ACP is critical. I want to thank the members of the General Assembly who did sign on to a bipartisan letter encouraging the North Carolinian delegation, senators and representatives to move forward with that. We're still somewhat optimistic that that's going to continue to move forward, but it does seem to have stalled a little bit again up in D.C. So please reach out if you can to our federal counterparts at the Senate and the House, and again encourage their continued support for that legislation. It is a $27 million problem a month for North Carolina. Thankful to our providers who have not cut people off because the $30 offset is there. So again, to those in the provider community, thank you for your continued support. And we're very grateful for the fact that we are still getting more and more North Carolinians connected. Moving forward, as I said, I just want to talk a little bit, very, very briefly around artificial intelligence. This is a common question I get asked is, what are we doing here at the state government level? So we have, in fact, created a framework document. You notice I will not use the word policy. We're taking the stance that artificial intelligence, has been around for some time. I believe we've been doing artificial intelligence work during the COVID days, post-COVID days. Our bigger concern is around generative AI and more specifically publicly available generative AI. So when you say ChatGPT, that is publicly available generative AI. And so we are putting together a framework to help advise our agencies how to best move forward with use cases. How do we go about and mature and better understand the capabilities around generative AI, and then gradually move forward, if you will, to get closer to citizen impacting services. If you think about it, we're not ready to go out and jump out into a foster care situation and leveraging generative AI to make a determination as to whether or not a child should be removed from a household or if a child's ready to go back into a household. What we are trying to do is leverage back office opportunities. So things that we are doing in our statewide IT procurement, we talked a little bit about those back in the April hearing. As we look at our chief financial officer, there's a lot of things that we're doing around billing and things that we could do differently leveraging generative AI. I know there's use cases that Department of Transportation is taking a look at right now. State of New York, as an example, has done a lot of things as far as you look at the infrastructure funds that are available out there for departments of transportation and building highways and bridges, different things there that are available. Those are our more safe areas for us to start dabbling, if you will, in generative AI. And if we would make a mistake, we made a mistake. We're not breaching citizen data, things of that nature. But we are taking a risk-based approach to looking at it because we do have North Carolinian data here, and we want to make sure we're doing the utmost around that. And to that point, we have formed an AI work group. Excuse me. So this AI work group consists of my privacy officer, our state chief risk officer, our chief enterprise architect, and our chief data officer. And we are bringing agency folks on board, really more so from the business side than from the IT side, because generative AI is business impacting. It is not an IT thing. It is a business thing. And so what we're asking is for our agencies to come forward with use cases of where they think they have use for generative AI. And the purpose of this work group is to get them to yes. How do we enable those opportunities, but making sure that we're doing everything that we need to do to protect our North Carolinian data? Excuse me. So through that, we're doing our privacy threshold analysis. So a lot of our things are being driven now from our privacy officer's perspective, less so necessarily from the cybersecurity side of the house, but there is an overview of cybersecurity. We are working, interestingly enough, we're trying to identify what procurement language do we now need to put in our contracts. So we do have a work group underway that's with our privacy office, our general counsel, our DOJ attorneys, and starting to look at what are the things that we need to put in place. So vendors, as you are coming in with artificial intelligence capabilities in response to our RFPs, we have an understanding what that looks like. And we already had a couple vendors reach out to us and say, hey, we're looking to leverage AI in our new release. Are we okay to leverage XYZ data elements from the state of North Carolina? That's great conversation and dialogue for us to have. And the answer is going to be, it depends. And in some cases, I think we can get to yes. In other cases, we're going to sit there and say, no, because of the sensitivity of the data. So more to follow on this, and we're looking forward to, I do believe there was legislation that was, I think Representative Hawkins may have introduced to do something more. We're looking forward to participating with that and hope to have more conversations on that line. Around student outreach, this is a great opportunity for us here in the community to do something different. I was amazed at your slide there about the number of women that are in IT and the fact that we are number one. And I think we have a lot more to go. We can do much, much more. And really, in a lot of cases, we're learning that young women make decisions on careers while in middle school. And so the Hour of Code is something that Accenture has been doing in partnership with DIT here for the last 2 years. And it's been focused on basically the Wake-Durham County area. This year, upcoming during December 6th through 12th, we negotiated with Accenture to take this statewide, to get to all 100 counties with this program and influence, hopefully, young men and women that are in middle school to start thinking about a career in information technology. To be able to do this, we need help. We need volunteers, and all of you sitting in this room can be volunteers. It does not have to be a state employee. Our legislative members can help us in volunteers. If you don't have to work for Accenture to be a volunteer. So all of you sitting here in the community, and we really would like to see female IT leaders out there. We went to Cumberland County last year just by pure accident. Happened to meet the superintendent in October of last year, talked to her about the program. She invited us into all of her classrooms in Cumberland County, all her middle school classrooms. The feedback we got was how the young women in those middle school classrooms were amazed of being instructed by a female IT leader. They did not think that was something that was possible. That's powerful. That's a difference maker. So all of you sitting here in the room, please, we're going to be probably soliciting for volunteers late August, early September to go ahead, and it's during the week of December 6th through 12th that we're going to go ahead and do this. What we've seen when we look at some of these IT opportunities here in the state working with our high school students, we get a very good outturn between Raleigh and Charlotte. We don't get anything east and west. Probably the furthest west was at Hickory. Thank you, Nicole. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do is we're trying to take this statewide. We're trying to demystify it. Last year we did about chatbots, and you were creating a bot and going through different things, and it kind of let us talk about AI a little bit. It let us talk about implicit bias and a couple other topics. This year now it's going to be a cybersecurity theme. So we're very hopeful of taking this statewide and getting to an output and outcome, and again, getting young men and women interested in information technology, and hopefully attract more younger women to entering into the IT field. Just real quick on statewide IT, I know this is something, since we have a number of vendors sitting in the room here, July 3rd, by July 3rd, we're going to have that Consolidated Cybersecurity Services RFP out in the street. We had a delay a couple days here. Unfortunately, I wanted it out by the end of the month, but we added some language around generative AI in the contract, which kind of spewed some other discussions that we had to work through and resolve. So again, we will get that out posted before July 3rd or by July 3rd. This is huge for us. This is basically pulling all cybersecurity related activity services, hardware, softwares, other services into a single master services contract here in the state. So please be on the lookout for that. We're sorry it's taken so long, but it was important for us to get it right than necessarily rush out and get something out there on the street. And with that, we have 4 minutes left. Any questions? What? Oh, okay. Thank you. I think what I was being told was just make sure I let everyone know here in the room that Jonathan Shaw, who is our general counsel, has also assumed the role of our chief operating officer. So he now has statewide IT procurement under his purview as well. So Jonathan has yet to thank me about that, but that's okay. But anything else I missed, staff? Nicole, anybody? Okay, Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you, sir, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And just one thing I wanted to go back and touch on. We mentioned the bill that consolidated all the language for fixing a couple technical things, but also enabling the BEAD money, fixing the issue with CAB. That is something we will say we are in active, as in when I'm on my phone, we are in active negotiations trying to get that herd pushed through. And if we can get a budget pushed through, we'll try to get it included. If not, we'll try to get it through some other routes. But that's so important to people in this room and all over the state. So everybody, I just want to thank you so much for being here. Members, do you have any follow-up comments, questions?